This transformation is, of course, first and foremost, a personal act of liberation, and peace and justice are its outcomes. Therefore, through the liberating potential of the cross, we are to transform the world by our own personal transformation. This was eloquently sung by Bishop Njegoš in some of his most famous verses. It is your lot and call to bear the cross, alive to strive with brethren and with strangers. We bear thus the cross, the crucified love toward both friend and foe, which is a testimony in and of itself. But what is of essential significance at this point is the freedom of individual. Any course, when not taken up willingly, ends up being a yoke, heavier than any other imaginable, and instead of liberating, it burdens the soul with individualism. Paradoxically, absolute freedom is only given when it is freely offered to God and the world. And here lies the essence. It is by respecting and affirming the freedom of our neighbor that we bear witness to the Lord, since it is precisely freedom that He gave to us. Peace, hospitality, and mutual respect are not merely economic, socio-political subjects, but are mainly of spiritual provenance, meaning that they are realized as part of our relationship with God. This primarily involves an inner testimony, which is only secondly expressed by an outer one. Therefore, love, hospitality, justice, and harmony are only fruits of a prayerful and peaceful soul, whereas famine, war, and natural catastrophes stem from its opposite. Of course, no particular Christian denomination has monopoly nor exclusive rights for testifying this truth. Quite the contrary. Every single Christian is called and obliged to bear witness to Christ as the truth and life, and to testify His gospel as good news about the salvation of all people and all the creation. Furthermore, it would be important to note that the mentioned fruits are in no way of secondary value, since they serve as a mirror to the soul. If one does not bear witness, one remains barren, without bearing the life one has received from Christ. Also, as was already said before, an essential part of the life in church is the relationship with our neighbor, because the Gospels are not written down in order to enable us to judge and offer manifests, but represent an invitation for every one of us individually to open up to the other. It seems that the contemporary geopolitical crisis in Europe is in many ways triggered by moral decadence, political crisis, decadence, the deformation and expansion of a common Christian European identity out of the public domain, which is all in turn a result of a lack of personal testimony of individual Christians. All of these processes are accelerated and supported by cultural trends, which all hide under the guise of human rights, but share their mutual neglect of the fact that Europe came to be what it is only as a Christian entity. Modern culture of superficiality keeps forgetting the significance of individual integrity, which is deeply rooted in a Christian way of life, and blindly follows massive, viral global trends. These new models and contents of life are being imposed not only through media and propaganda, but also through political decisions and legislative solutions. New value system almost completely foreign to Christian ethics and based on secular, inclusive values. New social structure and forms of human communities founded on principles distinct or even opposite to Christian understanding of the dignity of the human person and the sense of the community. The potential renewal of the Christian old continent and the renewal of the still alive and active Christian communities is in its roots only possible through a revitalization and thorough rethinking of authentic forms of Christian testimony. Such forms are almost exclusively demonstrated through interpersonal and intercommunal relations. A true Christian never persecutes anybody, regardless of the differences that may exist, but tends to incorporate the truth of the gospel in their personal witness. And this brings me to my main point. To be Christian is to love and strive toward your neighbor, regardless of their race, faith, or gender. We must know that we need each other to be church. We need each other to be Christian. And we need each other to be people. This is the true reality of our church and of our destiny. And recalling St. Chrysostomos' reflections on the verses we are studying, let us not forget to keep each other in the spirit and the church. Let us not fear and shudder through our mistrust and lack of faith. Let us repent while there is opportunity to bear witness to each other and to the world. Let us rise out of our sins and overcome the boundaries of our mutual limitations. We can be grace if we are willing. And because I have still time, I would like upon those thoughts to share with you one film we have made together with CEC, which is outcome, which is result of one conference we have organized in Zagreb about minorities. And in that conference, we have a lot of speakers from all over the Europe, but at the end we had two young people, one Serbian girl from Croatia and one Croat from Serbia. And first speaker was that girl, Serbian from Croatia, describing difficulties during the war and after the war, civil war in former Yugoslavia. And it was very interesting that after she has finished her presentation, it was turn of a young Croat from Serbia. And he said, if I wouldn't know that it was Jelena, I would think that it was me personally. So and I was surprised, because I'm bishop in Croatia, and I moved from Serbia to Croatia, and when I was thinking in past about the position and the rights, human rights here in Serbia, I thought that everything is okay. So I was surprised, and I thought at that moment that a lot of my colleagues, fellow bishops, would think the same, would feel the same. What does he want? In Serbia, everything is okay. Everybody has equal rights. And I understood that the minorities always are very sensitive. And it's not enough to have legislative good if there is no goodwill. So like small, like child in front of old men, always is complex, treatment. So if the old man wants to have good connection, he must overcome the law and to show much more than which is guaranteed in the law. He must show the goodwill. So I wanted to say that we have to be very careful about the minorities everywhere. And it's not enough just to give the European laws and to think everything is okay. Because if there is no goodwill, we can misuse the laws and to make the minorities to have problems. So, sorry, I would like to show that film which is made in Brussels. Because after that conference, there were 10 Serbs from Croatia and 10 Croats from Serbia together in Brussels. Please.
How long will it take?
We will be within 45 minutes. It's about 50 minutes.
I'm afraid that we can't do it. It's 10:04 now, and or perhaps I'm mistaken. No. Okay, it's okay. I'm confused. I'm sorry.
I'm not confused.
You're right.
Igor, Katerina, Olivera, Boya, Yelena, Maria, Sarah, Vladimir, Marina, Lebosha, Martina, Eddie, Emina, Eva, Nicola, and Leon. Young Serbs and Croats in Brussels sharing a meal in a common language. Among the 20-strong group are students, lawyers, a historian, a doctor, an accountant, a music teacher, a travel agent, and youth leaders. From the outside, they're hard to tell apart. Who's a Serb? Who's a Croat? And what does that mean? Historically, they're distinguished by their churches. Most Croats are Catholic, and most Serbs Orthodox Christians who use Cyrillic script. They're the guests of the Conference of European Churches, CEC, the ecumenical Brussels-based fellowship that seeks to promote peace, justice, and human rights, and in this case, the rights of religious minorities. Their visit was a follow-up to CEC's consultation on the rights of religious minorities, which took place in Zagreb in October 2016, and involved CEC's long-standing partners, the Church's Commission of Migrants in Europe, the European Parliament's Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup, and the Serbian Orthodox Diocese of Zagreb and Ljubljana. Like so many young people, these Serbs and Croats enjoy sharing a joke, dressing up, having a drink, and falling in love. But unlike most of their European counterparts, these young people grew up in the shadow of a conflict, the 1991-95 war that tore Yugoslavia apart and led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people.
Najgore su bile godine od rata gdje je bilo raznih, kako da kažem, fizičkih obračuna i slično.
Onda su znali ljudi topografije, to su nam pokazivali da bi mogli manipulisati sa ljudima koji zapisuju ko ulazi, ko ne ulazi, ići na više strana. Domalo samo što nisu kopali tunela da bi ušli u crkvu.
Redovno je bilo ostanje bez posla i također fizički obračuni gdje su naprosto mnogi bili prisiljeni napustiti to područje.
Dobili su zabranu ili će da biraju da idu u crkvu i da slave Božić, slave Uskrs, ili će da se učlane partiju, ili će otići iz države.
But the problem of ethnic tension didn't disappear at the end of the conflict. Once the borders were drawn between newly independent states, many minority ethnic communities were orphaned in what had become a foreign country. There are 186,000 Serbs living in Croatia, according to its 2012 census, as opposed to 580,000 recorded in 1991. Serbs make up more than 4% of the population, while the number of Croats in Serbia is much smaller, at 58,000. At less than 1% of the population, Croats are the fourth biggest minority and one of 26 ethnic groups recognized by Serbia. 20 years after the conflict, how are these minority communities faring? Croatia became a member of the European Union in 2013. Has this made a difference? In spite of an adequate legal infrastructure, human rights observers, such as Amnesty International, point to widespread ethnic discrimination in Croatia. As for Serbia, the EU Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee admits that while Serbia does a lot for its ethnic minorities, there's still room for improvement.
Institucionalna diskriminacija je najstrašnija. Imamo primjere gdje se ljudi ne zapošljavaju u državnim institucijama, a morali bi biti po zakonu, imaju svoje kvote, mjestima na kojima će imati državni predstavnika.
Naši ljudi, Hrvati u Republici Srbiji, imaju ponekada probleme sa zapošljavanjem. Pa često i posavjetujemo ljudi ukoliko postoji neka rubrika nacionalnosti da se striktno ne izjašnjavaju kao Hrvati, već da ostave tu rubriku praznu da budu neopredeni.
Imamo problem sa školstvom, gdje se djeca ne smiju izjašnjavati tko su i što su, zato što ih se automatski diskriminira i oni moraju, prisiljeni su, kako ne bi bili diskriminirani, čak ići na katolički rodom.
Nas kao Hrvati u Vojvodini zabrinjava zato što država ne može da finansira štampanje udžbenika na hrvatskom jeziku za naše učenike i uvijek moramo da tražimo financije različitim putevima, govorim o određenim nivoima sponzorstva.
Možete se doći svakoga dana da su ulice pune grafita kojima se poziva na linč Srba. Postoje posteri na kojima su nacrtane stabla i na kojima piše srpsko obiteljsko stablo, na primjer Bise, direktno se poziva na svakoj omanjoj fešti, na nekakvom druženju vi čujete pjesme koje pozivaju na klanje, koje pozivaju na ubijanje, uništavanje Srba. Jednostavno došli smo do situacije u kojoj zaista postoji otvoren strah pripadnika srpske nacionalne manjine u Republici Hrvatskoj za svoj život, a ne nalazimo na jednu šutnju od strane vlade, ne nalazimo na jednu šutnju od strane Evropske unije koja je kraj krajeva garant samih manjinskih prava svim svojim državama članica.
Kada ljudi iz naše zajednice urade nešto dobro za Republiku Srbiju ili dobro za svoju zajednicu ili bilo kakvu dobru stvar ili projekat, to se negdje ne spomene u medijima. Međutim, ukoliko postoji bilo kakva vrsta dokazanog, nedokazanog incidenta, to često bude u medijima i završi sa nekom negativnom konotacijom i odrazi se apsolutno na celokupan život zajednice.
Čovjek koji je srpske nacionalnosti shvaća da mu je najbolje ili negirati svoju diskriminaciju ili je nastojati prikriti ili naprosto napustiti ove krajeve.
Aware of these struggles, the Serbian Orthodox Diocese of Zagreb and Ljubljana proposed an initiative to CEC that aimed to help young people defend the rights of religious minorities.
Učestvovali smo u organizovanju ove konferencije sa evropskim institucijama zato što osjećamo da postoji veliki raskorak između zakonodavstva i onoga što se dešava na terenu kada je reč o pravima manjina. A manjine su nikako balast, nego samo bogatstvo svakoga društva.
In the run-up to Easter 2017, a joint delegation consisting of 10 Serbs from Croatia and 10 Croats from Serbia came to Brussels for a 4-day conference. Why did CEC want to bring them to Brussels?
Da se upoznaju sa visokim demokratskim standardima, sa principima vladavine ljudskih prava, ali i, što je također važno, sa mehanizmima koji štite i kontrolišu provođenje zakona.
As we are here standing next to the European Commission, it's good to remember that the European Union originally is a peace project and a project of equality.
But the example of the European Union proves that people who were allegedly foes for lifetime and forever can become very close friends and partners. The best example is the policy of reconciliation between France and Germany after 1945.
Within the EU, within the same kind of family, we are showing the same destiny.
It's important for them to discover Europe, what it means, the building of Europe today.
What did the initiative hope to achieve?
There's someone from the United Kingdom, I think, of the terrible times between Britain and Ireland in Northern Ireland, and we should be hoping to have some of that experience of reconciliation.
We are witnessing the initial meeting between the two groups as they visit Quaker House in Brussels. Here they are to take part in a series of mediation exercises run by the Quakers, one of CEC's partner organisations.
We have brought groups together for 2 sessions on their first evening where they met each other and they explored some of the basic questions about their identity, how they as a minority within their country are perceived by the majority, and some of the negative things which are said about them, and they've had an opportunity to share that in a confidential, safe environment. They will have a chance to share for 3 minutes and then be listened to without interruption, and then their partner has reflected back what they heard, and then they've swapped over and done that process again.
Having broken the ice, what did these mediation exercises achieve? Friendship.
Ono što me posebno usrećilo jeste to što su se naše dvije grupe jako dobro složile. Jako smo se dobro razumijeli kroz rad u sesijama, u parovima, kroz običan ljudski razgovor na koji smo na neki način u sesijama bili primorani, nešto tako bilo pravila, ali rezultati toga su bili jako dobri.
Empathy.
Srbi u Republici Hrvatskoj ulaskom u Europsku uniju su dobili jedan veliki dijapazon prava, međutim, koliko sam danas vidio, ta prava su samo na papiru i ne sprovode se u potpunosti koliko bi trebalo.
And understanding.
Mi nemamo problem međusobno jer nismo opterećeni prošlošću na način na koji su to možda stariji ljudi ili ljudi koji su više involvirani u određeni sistem. Znači, naša komunikacija je lakša, ima više razumijevanja i slično.
As a result of this dialogue, Mario and Jelena, the two youth leaders of the National Council of Serbia and Croatia respectively, restated a joint declaration in which they agreed to work together so as to defend the rights of minorities in each of their countries, as if to underline the success of the programme. Later that week, the group demonstrated their ability to build bridges in a symbolic act of horseplay
slobode. I sad se što se dogodilo da se zapravo da sam se tako napravila njihove ljudi na dve druge, jedna je druga išla s jedne strane ulice, druga s druge, pa sam dobila rekao da je neki moment kao njihov predstavnik i naša Jelena se zapravo sve ulice, sve više uspjela da raši i rukovo izljubili mimo srećne dali da je čokolada.
United in a common cause, the delegates were keen to meet EU officials and diplomats and explain the human rights situations that they face in both countries. More important still, they sought advice on how to resist discrimination against their communities.
U momentu ulaska Republike Hrvatske u Europsku uniju i periodu koji prethodio prije toga prava koja su zagarantirana i koja su postavljena bivala su implementirana u određenoj kvalitetivnoj mjeri u odnosu na naše mjeri. Kad čim smo ušli u Europsku uniju, prava su zanemarena i država je počela apsolutno ignorirati srpski problem.
Mindful of their counterparts' experience, the Croats from Serbia wanted to ensure that their rights would be respected after eventual accession. Since Croatia's membership of the European Union, there have been challenges in fully implementing its EU-compliant human rights legislation. To help both groups achieve their ends, HEP organised a series of interviews with high-ranking officials at the European Parliament, at the Commission, with the Executive Office of Northern Ireland, and with the Serbian and Croatian representations to the EU, as well as with church groups.
He was very interested to hear their concerns, to hear their frustrations, because these are real problems they're facing on their daily lives.
If the Croatian minority in Serbia has recommendations, suggestions, please feel free to send these to Commissioner Hahn, who's dealing with this in the Commission with his team, but you can also send them to me as a standing rapporteur, and I could also try and reflect your ideas in the report for next year, 2017.
Pregovarački proces Republike Srbije za ulazak u Europsku uniju je pravi primjer za to, jer zajedno radimo sa njima, sa nacionalnim savjetima i trudimo se da uvrstimo njihova mišljenja u naš pregovarački proces i rezultate koji će on doneti.
Smatram da je ovo iznimno koristan susret kojim se potiče suradnja između dvije zajednice i također pitanja koje su postavili predstavnici omladine iz Srbije i Hrvatske pokazuju da su oni iznimno zainteresirani za svoj položaj, za svoja prava, ali i za mogućnosti dobijanja određenih sredstava iz europskih fondova.
The message to the young people who were here was that through initiatives like that, through talking to each other, through trying to cooperate, that's the best guarantee that they can have in order to make sure that they resolve their problems.
It's a fantastic moment where young people are showing that there is an alternative to the war, to the enemies, to all these things what happens in the past in the Western Balkans.
What do the participants feel they've gained from the conference?
I ovo je dokaz da u stvari mi međusobno kao nacije nemamo problem, nego da su uglavnom političari više ti koji nam zadaju te probleme.
Mislim da mi problema sa povjerenjem nemamo, kad smo bili protiv dana, protiv noći. Drago mi da smo imali priliku vidjeti u stvari kako funkcioniraju institucije ovdje i kako naši ljudi ovdje rade. Mada mi je možda samo malo žao mada skožiti svojim kolegama što stvari imam osjećaj da nas nisu previše shvatili i da su nam davali neke tipično političke odgovore.
Što se tiče posjeta dužnosnicima, bilo je tako kako je, vidim da su nas saslušali, pa sad da, mislim, da ne mogu nešto promijeniti, ne znam, ali neka se naš glas čuje u budućnosti.
Back to the table. How should these young people go forward?
Ovo se jednu novu energiju da nastavimo dalje raditi s još većim intenzitetom i da pitaju naših prava, na kraju krajeva i prava naših kolege iz Srbije.
Prvo večera, pa ćemo onda vidjeti kako radi. Iskreno, meni bitnije shvaćati, odnosno potvrditi ako mišljenje koje sam imala da smo mi samo obični ljudi bez obzira na vjeru, na
sukobi iz 90. godina, njih zanima budućnost. Svi smo ovdje shvatili da moramo bolje, da moramo jače, da moramo zajedno. Ako bih morao da dam zaključak, što će to biti u budućnosti, što će nas spajati, to će biti volja i taj karakter čelične volje koji će pokazati kako mogu, na primjer, jedan Srbin iz Republike Hrvatske i jedan Hrvat iz Republike Srbije da pruže jedan drugom ruku, da kažu ostalima koji ne misle tako, bez ikakvog straha, da kažu hej, to smo mi možemo da sarađujemo, mi smo ta nada, mi smo budućnost i jednostavno ne želimo da budemo kao vi idemo dalje i mi idemo napred.
We have coffee break now. We will be back here at 11:40. 45, I know that, but I want to start exact 10:45. I'm really confused about hours now. So 10:45 exact, and be on your seats 10:40. Thank you.
Vous voyez Marie et les champs. Certainement que oui.
sur Paris.
Si je vous ai donné l'autre impression, je m'en excuse.
Non, non, parce que c'était voulu.
Et c'est gentil.
Chez moi, elle est assez...
Et elle l'est.
Elle...
She's a lady.
Please take your seats. We have a lot to do. Thank you for being so disciplined and going to your seats now directly. We are about to start. Okay, good morning. We will start. Please take your seats. And first of all, we have two greetings this morning. We are greeted by video, or through a video by Mrs. McGuinness, the Vice President of the European Parliament. Please.
Reverend ladies and gentlemen, and a warm greeting to you all in Novigrad. I would dearly love to be addressing you in person today on the occasion of the General Assembly of the Council of European Churches. I had planned to be with you, but family and faith duties kept me in Ireland this weekend for the annual blessing of the graves in my home parish. This is a really important tradition where families come from far and near to remember loved ones no longer with us. It is perhaps a tradition that is shared with some of the church communities present in Novigrad. 5 years on from your General Assembly in Budapest in 2013, you moved further down the Danube, but remain in a region at the heart of our European continent. A region that has long been a crossroads of different cultures, identities and religions. Few cities or regions in Europe exemplify the richness of Europe's diversity, like Novigrad is a very Wadena region. The model of the European Union, united in diversity, could easily be your own. In a similar way, this spirit of overcoming our differences, to focus on what unites us, also lies at the heart of the text. You describe your organization as a fellowship of some 150 Orthodox, Protestant, Anglican, and Roman Catholic churches from all countries of Europe. What unites you is far more than a set of principles or values, important though these may be. You are united around the person of Jesus Christ, who preached the gospel of love, tolerance, and above all, hope. When your president, Bishop Hill, came to see me earlier this year, he explained that the theme of the General Assembly is goodness. The fact that you gathered here together in fellowship, coming from so many different backgrounds, is already a very powerful witness. As the people of Novigrad and the surrounding regions are acutely aware, peace and unity cannot be taken for granted. As recently as 1999, the bridges that spanned the Danube at Novigrad, powerful symbols in their own right, were destroyed. Those bridges have now been rebuilt. If we are serious about keeping the peace, we must constantly build bridges, constantly strive to keep open the channels of communication, no matter how difficult that may be. 18 months ago, the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani, asked me to take on the responsibility for Parliament's regular dialogue with churches and religious communities. Within the EU, this dialogue is provided at the highest constitutional level by way of Article 17 of the Lisbon Treaty. In the European Parliament, we take this dialogue very seriously. It is an opportunity to build bridges between our institutions in Europe and the faith communities, such as those represented by TEC. I'm very pleased to say that TEC is strongly and professionally represented in Brussels by your staff there, one of our most valued partners in the dialogue. The European Parliament is directly elected by European citizens and has a particular role to play in the evolution of the European Union. Citizens must be firmly at the core of the European project. We must keep a constant and open conversation with citizens about their concerns and their hopes for Europe. We must listen very carefully to many different views and voices and give leadership at this time of change. Europe, and not just the European Union, has faced a number of crises in recent years. You are discussing some of those challenges we face during your Future Europe sessions. Since you held your last General Assembly, we've jointly been grappling with issues such as the economic difficulties, the arrival of migrants from wartime countries, threats to peace and stability in our eastern and southern neighbourhoods, and broader global threats to our way of life, whether from terrorism or climate change. These are the sorts of issues that European policymakers need to discuss with organisations like TEC and its member churches spread across our continent. The two other themes of your gathering, justice and hospitality, point to how we might tackle our challenges. I always say that even if it didn't oblige us to have this dialogue with you, common sense would make us do it. Good public policy should have people at its heart. And to shape that policy, we need to talk with the people concerned. In my view, churches are close to the people. You're present in every city, town and village across the countryside. Churches serve an important social function, gathering people together so they can discuss their concerns. Churches can be a point of contact for people who are new to the area and can help them to be included in the community. There is another reason why the churches have a special role in reflecting on the future of Europe. The founding fathers of European integration wished to create a community of shared values. It is in the very nature of churches to ask the big questions, to try to see the bigger picture, to work for the common good, and to identify the fundamental principles, values and virtues that underpin our society. It is my sincere hope that you can contribute to the public debate by underpinning what the peoples of Europe have in common, starting with the human dignity of each and every person. Because of Europe's dark past in the 20th century, we have a special responsibility when it comes to defending human dignity and promoting peace. The founding fathers created a very unique experiment. They convinced sovereign states to put aside their historical differences and pool their sovereignty in the interest of a one community and the greater good. We need constant reminding of where we've come from and what the world's most successful peace project has delivered for generations of Europeans. It is all too easy to forget and to slip into the seeing violence almost as a default setting for dispute resolution. Of course, looking back is not enough to shape the future. But history does teach us that bad things can and do happen unless there is a concerted effort in society to strive for higher ideals. Recent conflicts not far from our borders have led large numbers of migrants to come to our country, fleeing violence, destruction and tyrannical oppression and looking for a better life. If these people, including many Christian minorities, chose Europe, it is because our families of nations represent hope in a dark world of despair, a light in the darkness. We all recall the images of tens of thousands of distressed men, women and children trudging across Serbian fields in search of a safe haven. In the same way, full membership of the European Union remains the aspiration of many in Serbia and across the Western Balkans, despite all the recent difficulties faced by the Union. With your rich culture and heritage, you will be a welcome addition to our fellowship. On that journey, I believe that the churches of the region can make a valuable contribution. Your borough leadership can help promote the rule of law, respect for minorities, the fight against corruption and social justice. This year was designated the European Year of Cultural Heritage. Our shared European heritage is much more than historic monuments, churches and monasteries, though they are important. It is also about the debt our European continent and culture owes to Christianity. We recognize and regret that Christianity has sometimes been a cause of division on our continent. We only need to think of the conflict that followed the Reformation 500 years ago, or indeed the great schism between East and West 1,000 years ago. We also pay tribute to the many good things in European culture that have their roots in Christian institutions and principles. Hospitals, schools, universities, human rights. Notice that has been chosen to be the European Capital of Culture in 2021 and the European Youth Capital next year. These two honours pay tribute to Novi's heritage and an important European cultural crossroads, as well as hope for the future embodied in your young people. I wish you every success with those two initiatives. I hope that your rich religious tapestry will be prominent and will feature. And I wish all of the delegates at the General Assembly of the Conference of European Churches every success with your deliberations and reflections. You are in my thoughts and prayers. And some words of inspiration before I really go from an Irish poet, Seamus Heaney. Here on earth my labours were the stepping stones to upper air. Lives that suffer and come right are backlit by a water light.
I take the opportunity to thank also Mr. Fergus Olvera. Please stand for his work on the as a collaborator with the Parliament and for this encouraging message. Thank you very much. And then I want to call upon Mrs. Soraya Peccialani for the greeting from the Middle East, the Council of Churches. Please.
Bonjour tout le monde, je parle en français. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, frères et sœurs, au nom du MECC, le Middle East Council of Churches, et de ses 4 familles ecclésiales, évangéliques, orthodoxes orientales et catholiques, je vous remercie de m'avoir invité à participer à votre honorable Assemblée générale. Je salue cette Assemblée qui témoigne de l'unité dans la diversité et équipant les moyens ecclésiaux et juridiques pour la vivre et en témoigner. Je souhaite pour vous une collaboration encore plus étroite avec l'Église catholique, comme est le cas pour le MECC, que la famille catholique avec ses 7 églises rejoint en 1990. Je saisis l'occasion pour vous adresser un message venant de l'Orient. Nous vous remercions de l'accueil que vous faites à nos frères et sœurs qui viennent du Moyen-Orient. Votre hospitalité nous touche et nous vous invitons à ouvrir toujours plus grand vos portes. Mais nous vous invitons surtout à travailler pour que les chrétiens restent chez eux au Moyen-Orient. Sans eux, le Moyen-Orient changera de figure et perdra le sens de l'altérité. Au Moyen-Orient, nous ne sommes pas des invités, nous sommes chez nous. Nous avons pris part à la construction de nos sociétés et de nos pays. Sans nous, ces pays ne seront plus ce qu'ils sont. C'est pourquoi aidez-nous. Défendez la justice pour qu'il y ait la paix. Il n'y a pas de paix sans justice. N'écoutez pas les médias. Venez et voyez. Venez et voyez. Soyez témoins de ce que vous aurez expérimenté. Par exemple, les Nations Unies et l'Union européenne veulent que le Liban accueille 2 500 000 réfugiés syriens et palestiniens pour une population de 4 millions de Libanais avec 350 000 enfants à scolariser avec un pays endetté. Pareil pour la situation en Irak, en Syrie et en Terre Sainte. De quoi parle-t-on quand on parle de l'hospitalité dans un pays comme le mien? Par ailleurs, vos agences humanitaires sont là pour nous aider et nous les en remercions. Mais pourquoi certaines s'implantent chez nous et cherchent à nous remplacer? Chers frères et sœurs, il est une certitude de la foi ecclésiale. Cette portion du peuple de Dieu au Moyen-Orient est confiée aux églises locales là-bas. Nul ne peut s'y substituer, sinon en déchirant le corps du Christ. Alors de grâce, soyons vigilants. Et de plus, permettez-nous de vous aider à lire et à construire les modalités concrètes de l'unité dans la diversité sur votre propre territoire européen. Nous pouvons vous aider à penser les nouvelles conjonctures qui s'imposent à vous avec l'arrivée des chrétiens orientaux et des musulmans. Nous en avons le guide d'emploi. Vous avez vous aussi besoin de nous. Enfin, et surtout, ne parlez pas en notre nom à notre place, s'il vous plaît. Ne pensez pas à notre place, ne décidez pas pour nous à notre place. En d'autres termes, travaillons ensemble, réfléchissons ensemble, construisons ensemble le nous ecclésial, créons des structures flexibles et simples pour bâtir des ponts entre le MECC et Koinonia, diaconia et martyria, tout un programme, travaillons-y, le temps presse, l'amour nous presse. Merci. J'ai apporté avec moi une petite boîte de chocolat qui ne rivalise pas avec le chocolat de Bruxelles. Mais je l'offre au président et au conseil parce qu'il vient d'une association d'enfants portant de handicap, une association dans laquelle je travaille et pour laquelle je voudrais aujourd'hui devant vous porter hommage. Merci beaucoup, messieurs les modérateurs.
Vous êtes entre nous et alors c'est tout à fait vrai qu'on a besoin les uns des autres. Et la relation avec le Moyen-Orient et avec votre conseil est fondamentale aussi pour nous. Grand merci à vous. Merci. Chocolates are offered now. Thank you for the program of today. So we are about to start a general plenary now with keynote addresses and so on, reflection and sharing thoughts. This afternoon after lunch break we have a plenary. We have a business plenary. It will be continued at 5 p.m. with another business or the same business plenary. We have evening prayer, and after dinner we have regional meetings. That's the program, the menu for today. And now, so the general plenary with two keynote speakers. And first of all, I have the honor to introduce to you the Most Reverend Antje Jacqueline, the Archbishop of Uppsala. There are three reasons to be very grateful to have the opportunity to introduce the Most Reverend Antje Jacqueline. First of all, she is a distinguished church leader, a creative and inspired theologian, so we are very happy, we will be very happy to hear her on witnessing. That's the theme of the day. The second reason is that it reminds me on the celebration of last January in Utrecht, where we were able to celebrate our new agreement of full communion, or communion agreement actually, between the Union of Utrecht, of all Catholic dioceses, and the Church of Sweden. We are very proud of that. It's a small but an important, perhaps an important contribution to the ecumenical movement in Europe and universal actually. You hear that I am proud of it, so therefore it's a bit another reason. But the third reason, perhaps it's the most important today, because Archbishop Jacqueline is celebrating her birthday together with us.
Let's sing.
Let's sing a song.
Birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Antje, happy birthday to you.
I didn't know that you knew about my birthday, but certainly a great pleasure to share this day with you. So thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm really glad to be here. And now let's go to witness. The late Roman Catholic Cardinal Karl Lehmann once said, "The future Christian will be a witness, or soon he will be no more." So his words suggest that the importance of witnessing is growing fast and significantly, maybe even exponentially. The presence of other faiths and no faith, as well as the considerable decay of religious literacy in general, and Christian literacy in particular, have changed the religious ecosystems, not only in Europe. If there once, in a number of countries, was the assumption that more or less everybody, except a few minority groups, was Christian one way or the other, active Christians nowadays, in many places, find themselves being those who deviate from the norm. Hence, witnessing becomes more visible, more important, and a more challenging part of being a Christian. This means, of course, that churches, congregations, pastors, priests must pay more attention to how they equip men, women, and children to be good witnesses. However, let us make one thing clear right from the start. The nature of witness is sort of ambiguous. On the one hand, in order to be a good witness of the gospel of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, you need skills, knowledge, and practice. Not only do you have to know at least the basics of Christian life and faith, you also need to know the context you are witnessing in. And it certainly is an advantage if you have honed your pedagogical skills. On the other hand, to become a witness is not really your choice. You become a witness because you happened to be there when it happened. Most people who are called to court have not chosen to be witnesses. They became witnesses because they happened to be there and they got drawn into the consequences of an event. The same with us. We are witnesses of the faith because we were drawn into the Christ event. Sure, none of us was there when baby Jesus lay in the manger. We were not there when he blessed the children and challenged the priests and Pharisees. We were not there when he ate his last supper with his friends, when he was crucified and when he rose again. And yet, Jesus has been born in our hearts. His blessing has been called down upon us, for many of us, when we were very little children. His words about radical love continue to challenge us. And in our baptism, we died with him in order to rise and walk in newness of life together with him, as you recognize from Romans 6. And in the Eucharist, we partake of everything he promised his disciples. So yes, we are disciples and witnesses without it being our own doing. And still there are tons of things we can do to be good and efficient witnesses. Witnessing is about the tension between our own doing and God doing it all. The tension that the Apostle Paul describes so well in Philippians 2 And when I was young, I never got my thoughts around this opposition that he's putting forward. It says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, enabling you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. That's what witnessing is. It's work on it with fear and trembling, knowing that God does it all. Hone your skills as best as you can, and know it is God who works in you, through you, and even in spite of you. And that, I think, is the real good news, that God also works in spite of us. In recent years, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to travel in countries where Christians are a minority, even a minority under oppression. Whether in India, Myanmar, Pakistan, Egypt, or Iraq, everywhere I was struck by the emphasis on Christian witness. Although a tiny minority, the readiness to witness through life and work stands out. Schools, medical services, interfaith relationships. And local church leaders often claimed, we are a healing presence in this society, and we show it. This society needs our presence, even though we are discriminated against. And they really put emphasis on the healing presence, rather than on the more theoretical truth claims, as important as those are as well. Witness is about healing, even in situations where we are forced to resist, to question, to argue, even when the message of the gospel leads us into controversy. One might say, the more Christians deviate from the standard citizen in a country or in a community, the more their witness is both natural and required, because Christians stand out as the other, and because witness to the love of God and neighbor is crucial for Christian survival, especially in a hostile environment. In such an environment, special care and energy should also be given to the common witness by the local communities, as well as by supporting communities from other parts of the global church, over against the individual witness. Because in dangerous and exposed situations, spiritual leaders should be very attentive to the situation of individuals who are young in life or young in faith, so as not put too heavy a burden on them as witnesses. As we all know, martyria is part of Christian faith. A Christian should be prepared to accept martyrdom when necessary, but never seek it. Thus, the demand to witness comes very much from below. It is required by the current living and working conditions for churches in many parts of the world and Europe. So that's the below, it comes out of the context. But on top of that, of course, we have Jesus' commission given to his disciples from above at his ascension. You will be my witnesses, as the theme says, and to the ends of the earth. These famous words are preceded by a promise. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. Wherever we look, upwards, downwards, inwards into our own Christian tradition, or outside into the world, the call to witness is there, and it's urgent. Now, how shall we then go about preparing to witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ in Europe in the years to come? What does it mean to witness to salvation, unity, truth in contexts that are sometimes severely affected by the four dangerous P's of our time. Polarization, populism, protectionism, often manifested as nationalism, and post-truth. And I think that underlying all these four P's is a common lack, a lack of credible hope. Credible hope. Hence, 1 Peter 3:15-16 should be a guiding principle to witnessing in our time. Always be ready to make due defense to anyone who demands from you an accounting for the hope that is in you. Yet, do it with gentleness and reverence. And I would like us to turn to two exemplary witnesses of Christian faith to sort of extract some guiding perspectives on witness. So here's one example of the what of witness. Witness driven by divine dissatisfaction. In the year of the 50th anniversary of his assassination in April 1968, I would like to turn our attention a moment to the legacy of Dr. Martin King Jr., the great leader of the American Civil Rights Movement. As is well known, the witness of this Baptist pastor gained enormous political momentum. Yet those who have studied his work say that it was the black church and its spirituality that are the primary sources to understand his life and his thought. The black community looked to the black church not only for spiritual nourishment in hymns and prayers, but also for leadership and social and political support. Witness is public and holistic. Martin Luther King points to divine dissatisfaction as a driving force for witness. In a passionate speech, he puts it like this, and that's the quote you see. Let us go out with a divine dissatisfaction. Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and comfort and the inner city of poverty and despair shall be crushed by the battering rams of the forces of justice. That's what we get. And don't you hear an echo of the prophet Amos? But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. King called for broad education and empowerment of the oppressed, counting on the church as a symbol of hope and an agent of reconciliation. We may mishear some distinctly Christian vocabulary, like Jesus, grace, sacraments. Yet, if we look at it, theology is what it is. For instance, when King reflects on the relationship between love, power, and justice, as he puts it, which is another quote, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. This indeed is theology and a possible reading of 1 Corinthians 13:13, and the greatest of these is love. A church that takes the gospel of love seriously must endorse the pursuit of justice, the struggle for human dignity and human rights for all people, as well as the quest for freedom. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair, I say to you, my friends. So Martin Luther King said in his most famous speech. And as the preacher he was, he made a heavenly vision present. That's witnessing, making a heavenly vision present, turning it into an urgent appeal to transform injustice into justice. I have a dream today, he said. I have a dream that one day the rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. That's Isaiah. And he continued, this is our hope, and with this faith we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. And this dream has power, not only because he was so good at rhetorics. I think the dream had power because it was not just a dream, but a vision. It makes us see, at least for a moment, the world as it can be, if it dares to reflect the values of peace, justice, and compassion. And not only reflect them, but embody them in peaceful, just, and compassionate societies. And this is more than mere words of great men and women arguing for an open and democratic society, as they usually do, especially when an act of terror has struck their country. This is also more than honest appeals to not let fear take possession of us. The gospel of Jesus Christ has given us a vision. We can see what it will be when goodness reigns, when the soil of injustice, violence, and war, from which hatred grows, is no more. And the vision is that powerful presence of that future among us. It lays bare our shortcomings, our sin, our injustice, and at the very same time, as an act of grace, it instills in us hope and courage. It makes us see that it indeed is possible to hew out of that mountain of despair a stone of hope. It is a heavenly vision, at odds with the imperfection of the world, and not only at odds, in deadly clash. The very bearer of it, Jesus, was crucified. And yet, the spell of death was broken, and the journey of justice, peace, and reconciliation started anew. Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you, said the risen one when he met his friends again. And they saw victory over death, but they also saw the wounds, the traces of the nails that human fear had driven through his hands and feet. And doubting Thomas was invited to touch those wounds. And remember, even skeptics can turn into powerful witnesses. Nevertheless, it is the mission of a wounded God that we witness and bear witness to. Witness then also means to resist and to feel pain, the pain of our own wounds and the wounds of others, for the sake of healing. Witness can be pricey. We know Martin Luther King paid the ultimate price. His witness was truly martyrial. He died as a martyr because he expressed this divine dissatisfaction in fighting against injustice and racism for the sake of healing. So what might divine dissatisfaction mean today? In a Europe that loses heart in so many ways, maybe that could be a question for further reflection. What might divine dissatisfaction mean today? Let's now turn to another witness, more to the how of witness. Witness driven by divine surprise. Some years ago, I came across an Ethiopian-style icon that was in the Ecumenical Monasterio di Bose in northern Italy. And I showed that icon to a pastor. He immediately recognized the style of the icon, Ethiopian, but he didn't recognize the story. And here it is. And I said, it's Amos. And he said, but that was 2 disciples. For years and years, the Amos story from Luke 24 has mostly been told as if the disciples were 2 men. At least that was what I had learned. When in fact there is nothing in the story that suggests that they were 2 men. One is named Cleopas, the other isn't. The story suggests that they live in the same house, so they may very well be Cleopas and his wife. And sadly enough, this may be supported by the fact that her name is not mentioned. Women as witnesses have often had less worth, less visibility, and no names. Women have been made invisible in history, also in church history, with few exceptions. Although European church history, according to Acts 16, started with a woman. One of the few, no idea, Lydia, entrepreneur and migrant from what today is Turkey. She made the very Apostle Paul rethink his mission and his witness. And in the end, she made him receive the bread from her hands because she prevailed on us, as Acts has it. So here is Miss Cleopas at the table. We may be surprised to see her at that particular table. Good for us, for the willingness to let ourselves be surprised is a real gem when it comes to the virtues that advance Christian witness. And Amos is a story of divine surprise. They are surprised when the stranger who joins them on their sad and desperate walk home to Emmaus doesn't know about Jesus and his death on the cross. They're surprised when he explains Scripture to them. They feel affection and ask him in, because evening falls and they lay the table for the 3 of them. And then comes the breaking of the bread and the surprise that puts them all in motion. The risen Jesus disappears. They become aware of their own burning hearts and run all the way back to Jerusalem, although it's dark and their muscles are tired. Thus, Miss Cleopas became one of the first Easter witnesses. It may very well be she who provided the bread that Jesus broke so that they recognized him, believed, and ran back to Jerusalem to witness in sharing the good news with the others and with those still in the limbo of fear and loss, doubt and insecurity, with those still without hope and sense of meaning. I think it's a good idea to open our eyes together with this Ethiopian icon painter for Miss Cleopas and her witness, and to watch out for the Miss Cleopases rendered invisible in the history of our churches. They are there, in great numbers. In most places, they constitute the majority in the pews, the majority in our choirs, the majority in our confirmation classes, the majority among our young leaders. Let us call them by their names. Let us affirm their gift as witnesses of the gospel and have them participate fully in the ministry of the church. Because there were indeed 2 disciples at that dinner table in Emmaus that Easter day. And let us also see this. What a contrast. This is a diagram, is an example from my church, diocese of my church, showing the gender proportion of male and female when it comes to youth and adults in the church. Simply put, the farther we got into church involvement, the more girls and women we have. Baptism, it's rather equal. Confirmation, it's more girls than boys. Youth leaders, even more. And when we get to our employees, it's even more. There may be those among you who recognize the pattern from your own context and those who don't recognize it at all. But we are asking, where are the Mr. Cleopases, the boys and the men? And let us not blame the Mr. Cleopases for their actions, though. Rather, let us ask ourselves why we are not so good facilitating for boys and men to hear and to follow the call to be witnesses. And let us not forget those either who cannot fit into this male-female binary. So a question to take with us for further reflection here might be, how and where might divine surprise lead us today when we think and act about witnessing? The witness of the church, holistic and public. The common witness of the church is both holistic and public. God's holistic mission includes proclaiming the gospel. It means diakonia, serving the neighbor and becoming neighbors to each other, advocating for human dignity, justice, peace and reconciliation, as well as for the integrity of creation. The common witness of the church also is public, because God chose incarnation to save the world that God so loved, John 3:16, and calls the church to engage in public space. For those of you who may be interested in a deeper understanding of how Lutheran churches think about their public witness, I recommend the document that you see on the slide, The Church in the Public Space, and it's available, you just have to Google the title. It was adopted by the Lutheran World Federation in 2016. Here and now, I will only share the ABCDE of the church engagement in the public space. The ABCDE is assessing public issues in participatory ways, building relationships of trust, challenging injustice, discovering signs of hope, and empowering people in need. And all this more developed in this little document, The Church in the Public Space. I'm well aware that we, within the oikumene, pursue different causes when it comes to witness. The emphasis and the balance between public and personal, social and private, involvement and distance, and even between prayer and work may vary or even differ. But all these dimensions need to be present in witness, even if we put our emphasis in different places. Also, I think the time has come that we all, whether we are Orthodox, Protestants or Catholics, evangelicals or ecumenicals, search for a bolder and more effective common witness and service in God's beloved world. Now to come to a close, looking forward. Witness is needed whenever truth is contested. Witness is needed whenever truth is contested. We confess Jesus Christ as the truth. There is a truth, but not everyone knows it. itself makes that very clear to us. We have different accounts of the same truth, the four Gospels. A fact that constantly reminds us of what I like to call the apophatic surplus. The apophatic surplus. There is so much we know, so much we can preach. And my tradition has a proud modesty of preaching, sometimes too much and too long. Human voices can make the Viva Vox Evangelii, the living voice of the gospel, heard. However, the more we learn, the more we know how little it is that we really can grasp. The more we know that in spite of revelation, there is a dimension of the divine that is beyond human expression, always believe. Hence this apophatic surplus that we can't explain. And hence, our witness should always also be humble. Nevertheless, it should also bear the marks of parousia, of speaking candidly. For we cannot keep from speaking about what we have seen and heard, as Peter and John say according to Acts 4:20. Or as Paul puts it, for the love of Christ urges us on, 2 Corinthians 5:14. It's love. How can we hold on to love in the struggle for truth and against post-truth? We do not possess the full truth. If we pretend to have the full truth, we will violate love. So it remains a challenge to find the right path for witness. Too little parousia and too little confidence in our knowledge of the truth, and we will betray Christ and salvation through Christ. Too much confidence in our knowledge of the truth, and we will betray the love of Christ. And we know betraying love is the worst we can do. So I think in the end, our thoughts about witnessing turn us also back to prayer. And so may God bless our witnessing with both humility and parousia, with good courage to speak, and also excellent listening skills for the sake of healing. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your address. Witnessing, being public and holistic, humble and clear on the other side, listening and speaking, and seeking for the balance between those. Thank you very much. It was very rich. I can't repeat all things, it's not necessary, but it was very rich. Thank you for your witness, actually. And now I have the honor to call upon Mr. Tori Dolt, lay theologian of the Orthodox Church of Estonia, for some reflections on the address of Archbishop Antje. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello. Your Eminences, Your Excellences, honorable delegates, brothers and sisters in Christ. The act of giving witness of our faith in Jesus Christ, the Savior of all humanity, has been the cornerstone of Christian life and church already from its beginning. Apostle Peter's witness created the foundation of the church, and the witness of the penitent thief gave him a life in paradise. Witnessing the salvific role of the triune God and the identity of Jesus Christ has held a central role in every baptism that formed the first baptismal creeds and later conciliar dogmas. One might say that the central issue of all ecumenical councils of the first millennia evolved around the soteriological exactitude of what we witness. The same notions seem to govern also nowadays, but have shifted from dogmatic and creedal exactitudes to statements on exactitude of Christian moral values that the modern world, secular world, seems to ignore more and more. Under the pressure of a potential conflict with the secular world and with each other, Christians feel the need to give even more emphasis on what they believe to be the truth. Though the what aspect of witness remains and must remain important for Christians, the world notices other aspects of our witness. As Reverend Robert Fulgham has pointed out, and I quote, "Do not worry that your kids never listen to you, but worry that they always see you." Kids don't see the truth in the formation of our words, but in the way we present these words, the way our attitude is when we give witness to these words. The world that sees our witness is very often the same child that does not pay attention and neither is affected by what we witness, but on how we witness. And it seems to me that we are very persistent to never make compromises in our truth, but we have no problems making compromises in the way we give witness to this truth. And this is one of the most tragic aspects of witnessing, because forgetting the way we witness will most probably lead us into a Christian diabolic witness of God, without us even noticing it. But how is it possible that a Christian witness to God may be diabolic? For that I will tell you a story of Adam and Eve by St. John of Damascus, one of the most authoritative church fathers of the Eastern Orthodox Church. According to St. John, God created us with a passion and desire to seek God and to be like God. The devil, says John of Damascus, took advantage of this desire that God had implanted in us. The devil offered Adam and Eve the exact same thing that God had already offered them, the exact same thing that God made them desire. The bait that the devil used to deceive humanity, he says, was God himself. As chapter 3 of Genesis tells us, the promise of divinity offered by God is now offered by devil himself. Adam and Eve could not distinguish the difference between these two, as the truth and the destination of their movement seemed to be the same. It seemed to be God. But their life and witness became diabolic because they forgot to follow the way God gave them towards this destination and followed the devil's way. Whereas God offered a humble and a patient way where divinity was given by grace in the course of dynamic history towards maturity, the devil proposed another way, the way of instant power, and demanding that we egoistically and with impatience take what rightfully and justly should belong to us. In other words, the confusion that the devil created to Adam and Eve did not take away the aim of becoming like God, but gave a wrong diabolic way of becoming like God. Adam and Eve fell by thinking that they are giving witness to God. In the same way, we all fall every time our witness forgets its divine way and becomes diabolic. And what witness is diabolic? Every witness that creates and seeks separation instead of unity, war instead of peace, conflict instead of harmony. The Greek word diabolos, which means to set or put apart, is a spirit that guides every diabolic witness, and guided also the old Adam. The Greek word ecclesia, which proclaims us new Adam and means coming together, is a spirit that always seeks unity and communion. The previously cited story of Adam and Eve shows us that a seemingly secure act of witnessing God may become quite dangerous, and that there is a thin line that separates the witness of destruction from the witness of unity. And I believe that this line flows between the two witnessing ways that St. John Chrysostom symbolically calls the church as a courtroom and the church as a hospital. It seems to me that very often we Christians have not decided whether the church should give witness and reveal herself as a hospital, a courtroom, or both. When we emphasize the church as courtroom by human standards, then sinners must be corrected and approached with the same way we approach criminals, condemning and punishing them. In a secular society, this law and legal justice-centered approach is considered very normal, and we wouldn't imagine it otherwise. Condemning and punishment seems to be the most universal way to control and rehabilitate the often violent Homo sapiens and keep order. But it also satisfies our demand for justice and creates a secure feeling for many of us. Our modern secular world seems to give witness to this mentality sometimes even all too well. A child rapist or a sexual harasser will be crucified by the media and society as an exiled outlaw, and if it goes well, then also by the court law, destined to feel guilt and shame the rest of its life without forgiveness and forgotten by us all. This, sadly, is the harsh consequence of being a sinner in this justice-demanding reality we live in. And though this is the way how very often things in the fallen world work, it's not the way how the church should work. Because we are not called to witness the reality of the fallen world, but the reality of the resurrected world. History has shown us that a church that presents itself with the face of the courtroom will usually also start implementing herself, as Apostle Paul refers to it, via the weapons of the flesh. That is, via the means of the fallen world, the accusations, demanding, threatening, fear, the position of power that demands obedience, hypocrisy, political correctness, self-justification, and preservation of its historical position. Such a judicial phase will see its witnessing dogma only as a tool to seek out heretics and to condemn them with pleasure and without the hope of salvation. It will use its ethics and values to bring out others' imperfections and errors so that it could itself shine with the ruling perfection. The church as a courtroom will show the fallen humanity in the secular world its diabolic verdict, guilty in all charges and condemned to punishment, either in this life or the other. Even Martin Luther refers to this condemning, judicial and guilt-creating reality of the church that made him want to escape this torturing reality. The judicial church will use the same ways to fight the threats of the secular world and also fellow Christians. Witnessing God as yet another political control and condemning mechanism, which does not differ from all the other mechanisms and institutions of the fallen world. Sadly, to my secular co-patriots, this is the first thing that comes to mind when they think of the church, and the primary thing that diabolically keeps them away from it. But may it be as it is, the biggest thing that a witness of a church as a courtroom will never take into account is that our world has fallen sick, and should be approached as we approach the ones who have fallen ill. The judicial way of witnessing does not understand what St. John Chrysostom understood while he wrote, and I quote, "The church is a hospital and not a courtroom for souls. She does not condemn on behalf of sins, but grants remission of sins. Nothing is more joyous in our lives than the thanksgiving we experience in the church. In the church, the joyful sustain their joy. In the church, those worried acquire merriment, and those saddened joy. In the church, the troubled find relief, and the heavy laden rest. Come, says the Lord, near me, all you who labor and are heavy laden with trials and sins, and I will give you rest." You know, if John would have lived nowadays, he could have easily been a good marketing agent of a healing spa or a sanatorium that helps us, the northerners, to have relief from the harsh reality of darkness and cold. The church, according to St. John Chrysostom, should be therefore something similar. a sanctuary for the people who live in the darkness and the cold of the fallen world, and are in desperate need of care and therapy, and not condemnation and punishment. For the Orthodox tradition, the fallen humanity and the world are seen as victims, who by a diabolic confusion have made themselves ill from sin and suffer from it. The fallen world is not a divine punishment that would satisfy a justice-seeking God, but a mental reality we create ourselves. There is no need for extra divine punishment, neither from his side and neither from our side, because the tragic situation of the fallen world is already all the punishment it needs. For salvation, God does not offer the same thing that the fallen world already offers and represents. Such a witness wouldn't give our aching world anything new that it already doesn't know, leaving it no choice but to stay away from the church and seek for solutions in illusionary positivism and forgetful hedonism. But God offers us an alternative and a hope of a way out of this self-inflicted punishment. And that is why God approached us in a different way and became a witness to salvation and true divine justice in a therapeutic way. St. John of Damascus writes, and I quote, "While we were running away from God and hated him, he ran after us, and when he came to us, then he did not control us with strictness, and he did not convert us close to him with a whip. But he was as a wise physician, who was reviled by the sick that had become mad, but to whom he offered his therapeutic service. And despite the fact that he was reviled and persecuted, he showed patience, so that we would all follow his steps, and all that so that the ill would become well." End of quote. For John of Damascus, Christ wanted the world and the old Adam to give witness to the new Adam by imitating the way he redeems the world. His witness and call was therapeutically gentle, so that we wouldn't be frightened and would have the courage and hope to enter the healing process. His witness was therapeutically patient, because he knew that we are all ill and often not aware of what we do. In a harsh world governed by self-centered judicial dictatorship, Christ gave us an alternative way of self-denial and self-sacrifice. Though Christ is the only judge, he gave up being a judge for our sake and for our salvation. Though he is the source of all power and governance, he became a servant and a slave for our sake. And all this because he knew that only a therapeutic approach of love would make a stoned and a cold heart melt and be flesh again. All that he taught us. But how to truly know that the judicial approach of witness is not love and does not lead us to salvation? Maybe the whips and punishments are the only disciplinary ways that would lead us into true salvific love. Again, I will use St. John of Damascus to give us a way to check whether our witness is truly therapeutically loving, or whether it will lead to salvation or not. He writes, and I quote, "We must remember that Christ loved us despite the fact that we are his enemies. And he has mercy on us, and when he does, he humbles himself. And because he was humbled, humanity was saved. Because from love comes mercy, and from mercy humbleness, and from humbleness salvation." If our witness of love and justice is not followed by mercy and humbleness, then it is not Christian love, and we will give no witness to the hope of salvation. Christ showed us that such a witness, imitated by us, will create a powerful recipe that melts the cold hearts of a mad and ill humanity. Such is the witness that we all should give, and such is the only protecting weapon of our warfare to use when our values seem to be attacked and undermined by the secular world or even by other Christians. For the weapons of our warfare are not of flesh, writes Apostle Paul, but they are of spirit. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? So why don't we believe in it? we secretly think is an impossible utopia. The problem with the therapeutic witness is that it is one of the hardest things in life. It is easy to judge, being patient, condemn, demand from a position of power, and fight with the weapons of the flesh. These acts seem to come out naturally. But love, patience, mercy, and humbleness, the weapons of the Spirit, are so hard to keep and so easy to lose. And that because they need training, constant reminding, and asceticism. The judicial witness of the church, as a courtroom, will usually become diabolic because its existence doesn't need ascetics. Whereas the therapeutic witness needs constant training of faith that would keep us in communion with the experience of a merciful and a humble divine love. If we lose this communion, then without even noticing it, we will also lose the capacity of a therapeutic witness and enter into a diabolic witness where Christ becomes a mere philosophical idea that is formed according to our image and according to our will. And trust me, the world feels it. But with the witness and example of Christ who gave us His guiding Spirit and with the training of our free will, it is possible to keep the same imitating witness of our wise divine physician, who knows that illness never defines the ill. As Clement of Alexandria from 2nd century writes, and I quote and finish here, "To love your enemy is not to love evil, apostasy, adultery, nor theft, but to love the thief and the adulterer. Not in relation to the sin, because sin is an energy that poisons the name of humanity, but to love because it is human, a creation of God." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Putting that challenging question on the table. Would the church be a courtroom of an foreign hospital? And I was thinking in the way to Emmaus is quite a church as a hospital. And for combining those two addresses, I think I have to congratulate the program group who has invented it to combine the two of you. Now, the floor is yours. We have some time for some reflections, very short reflections. Please move to the mic. Tell your name and so on. So, mic number 3. Okay, please.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you both speakers for your good contribution. I'm much impressed by
your name.
My name is Jurgen Zelstra. I will speak in English. I'm impressed by the challenge that you put to us to give a witness in society. I myself am a minister of the Dutch Protestant Church in Hilversum, in the center of the Netherlands. But I have a big problem, really, in the sense that nobody seems to be eager to hear religious talk in the public space. They are glad when we are present. They like us to be there, but as a church, they are not really waiting for us to speak religious language. The reference character of religious words is more something that is being heard as a hobby or something from a distant past. The rituals belong rather to the museum than to actually daily life. So, can you help me to bridge this gap when it is concerning understanding religious language in the public space? Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you. My name is Åsa Ingårda from the Church of Sweden. And where we come from, we right now see and witness that people in all ages and in majority young people are suffering of mental illness. And in one of the richest countries in the world, how can we take help from other churches and Christians to find ways to help, to reach these people that is longing for hope and belief? That is my question. How can we help each other?
Thank you very much. Mic number 3. Please go ahead.
Father Gregory from the Orthodox of the Chemorest Church of Albania. I was so impressed by the words of...
Come a little bit closer to the microphone.
I was very impressed by the words of the Most Reverend Antiel, the Archbishop of Sweden. And she brought for us an inspired example, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, I want to share something else regarding him. When he was walking in front of cutouts in Selma, Alabama, one of the most respectable figure of the Orthodox Church, the Archbishop of Orthodox Church of Greece in America, Archbishop Iakovos, decided to join him in this walk, and he said after he said after this walk, he says some words that I want to share with everyone. He said that I know that civil rights and human rights and justice, so it was a time 1965 in America, to be the most thorny social issues in our nation, but I will stand for both rights, civil and human, and for justice as long as I live. In fact, the Archbishop Iakovos was a champion of human rights and also of the justice. He, after that, he was faced with a lot of troubles, with a lot of threatening, and his life was threatened also. But he said that what never will be, so that's the Christian duty to act like this. I want to close with this, that we should not be just witness not only in Europe, in this world, but we have to be a Christian witness, and to be a Christian witness, it doesn't mean to be present, but it means to speak out loudly when the injustice and every inhuman and every effort is done against the humanity. And in every to be witness, it means to be also always to be in danger, but it is worth it to be a witness of Christ.
Thank you. And yeah, the next one, mic 3.
Thank you.
Please go.
Yes. Our image of God.
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Thorvald Wiedersson. I'm a delegate from the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Iceland. Thank you. Our image of God, a hospital or a courtroom. When we have an image of God, that's a picture of God, then we need to realize that our picture will never frame God in a whole way. God is always more giver, as we all here know. The church needs to be the witness of that the bush is always burning. The divine is in the midst of us. The role of the church is to see that, hear that, witness that to others. But my question is a simple one to the Honorable Archbishop. We talked about boys in the church.
how can we involve the boys in our church? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Microphone.
I am Father Constantin Ginga from the Romanian Orthodox Church, and it's a rather common than a question.
Okay, you're welcome.
It's a word of thanksgiving for all of the three speakers of today. We thank you very much for sharing with us, first of all, the fact that we must overcome the law, and we must realize that the law is not solving things. We really need the goodwill. And on the other hand, it is so important to live all those requirements, all those ideas of witness, justice, hospitality in the church. Otherwise, as the last speaker said, we would relate all of them to our egos. But if we leave them in the church, they will work as metaphors, as instruments to put us in touch with God and help us receive help from God in order to fulfill our mission in the church and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one, microphone for.
My name is Jeanette Berg. I'm from the Swiss delegation of the Federation of Swiss Protestant Churches. I appreciated very much the lecture of Bishop Jekelen. Thank you. And I have a question concerning one issue you raised when you were talking about the witness of the church and the way that it should be implemented by, among other points, assessing public issues in a participatory manner. And I would be interested about your elaboration on that. Would that be an answer concerning doing this within the churches or with society, and in which way exactly? Because I think this could be also an answer to the Dutch colleague who asked how we could cover the gap or bridge the gap between society and churches.
Thank you. Can I ask your bishop first to comment on those questions? And so the question about bridging the gap with modern or secularized society and with secularized people not knowing that much from rituals and from religion actually. So how can you bridge the gap and how to reach those people? Please.
Yeah, thank you. Sure, I recognize the problem. We are having that all the time in Sweden as well. It is, of course, a question of translation. When people don't understand the classic Christian vocabulary and are not even interested in listening to it, we need to find a voice in the public space that translates what we stand for in a different language. Now, of course, that always has problems as well. Let me take an example. If we voice in the public space that the rights of children are important, then of course we are driven by having the image of Jesus blessing the children and Jesus saying, this is the grace in the kingdom of heaven and what you've done for the little ones and all these things. But we can't really use that as a motivation. That's why we're saying it, that we often use the, what's the English word, the UN Children's Convention. And then people can go back to us and say, oh, well, you're not Christian, you're just making political speeches. So I think it is a challenge, you know. One of the good examples, or helpful examples, may be that, of course, we all know that even secular people, well, let me put it this way, there are secular people who are secularized so much that they don't even have a secret longing anymore. They're totally different. But we have also many secular people who are not as secular as they think they are. And these people are also often perceptive to new rituals. They invent new rituals, but they don't understand that they are deeply spiritual and that they might actually come out of the Christian tradition, but they haven't seen them. And sometimes we can be helpful in putting words on them on these new rituals that people understand that they actually build bridges. But it's an art. It's a challenge, it's an art, and it's sometimes very frustrating. And I think the common denominator with the first and the second question, the question about the unhealth, especially in the mental unhealth in young people, one of the reasons we have these both things is that we have been taught extensively that faith is private and only private. And that has led to that young people are not offered the tools to actually handle the deep existential questions, so they lack the tools. So if they are confronted with this abyss that opens in front of your feet when you are a teenager, and they don't have a language to even voice their sense of wonder and amazement, but also their despair, that is a very heavy burden to bear. It's a very heavy burden to bear the meaningfulness of your own life all by yourself, not having God as the other in that sense. So I think there's a common denominator between this frustration about being able to have the Christian witness in the public space and the mental unhealth in young people.
Thank you very much. I apologize that we have no more time because it's a whole thing to reflect on. But please, a short reflection also from your side, David Dodd, on those questions.
The first question was, secular. I come from Estonia. It's considered one of the most secular countries in the world, and what we witness and see there is the so-called allergy. People are allergic against religious words, terminologies, and subjects. So if you bring them up, you go out, say I go out to a party with some guys, with people there, they look at me, yeah, you look like a really cool guy, but when you bring in the thing, that makes you Christian, you use some words, you give some witness, the basics change. They have this allergy. So what I've been noticing is that we need to be very, very gentle, and also, I think, not to be so stubborn with our vocabulary and with our, witness also, and go gently, go softly in this witness, because a baby cannot eat raw meat, You can't put it in and say, you have to accept it, that's my witness, that's what we eat. So start with the milk, and sometimes, this is what I've seen also as a witness from the church fathers, the Greek church fathers. They didn't say out all the things always, because they saw it's not good for the other person. I don't help the other person. So we just say they were hypocrites and lying? No. They were wise in this aspect. They were pastorally wise, and they were gentle. They know that there is time for everything. Nothing comes instantly. So we have to go through phases. And I think giving witness, we have to do the same thing. And the second aspect I would just mention here, we have to start actually living and believing in God. And sorry I'm saying it out, but a big part of Christians don't believe in God. And I mentioned they believe in God as a philosophical idea, and I'm a big fan of Feuerbach and others, and this is the case. This is our face, mirror reflection to the world, and we witness it also. So whenever I have seen true faith in the heart of people, the faith and love, you know what? It's visible. An atheist comes, he melts. I see that with my own eyes. It's because, and you don't need any words here, you just how you are. And I've seen that it works in a very strongly secular society. It's the only method we have.
Okay, thank you very much. Both of you, many thanks. I have a small gift for both of you. Yeah. Please, for the Maggie.
Moderator, the public issues document is online, and you are invited to consult it and to discuss it during lunch break, please. Also the CVs of the presidential candidates are now online and can be checked there. Thirdly, the nominations committee will meet briefly right after this session. It says before prayer, but I don't think it's possible. First pray, then meet. That would be better. And then a special announcement of a parallel event tomorrow during lunchtime. One of the stewards is working with a project of interreligious dialogue through storytelling, and she would like to have to offer this experience to those of you who are interested, and that would be tomorrow during lunch break, and it would take place here in Master Center, and in order to provide lunch for the participants who have lunch and then at the same time share their stories and hear about this project, we would need to know who wants to participate. So there's a piece of paper in the chapel where you can sign up for this interreligious storytelling project and anti-racism methods in practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then we will pray. You find our prayer page 74, 75. We will take the German version. I want to invite you. Group number 1. We will pray it in an alternating way. Group number 1 is a female group, Mrs. Wilbur, and number 2 is Mr. Wilbur, the male. Okay? Group 1 sind die Frauen, 2 sind die Männer. Im Namen des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes wollen wir die Sitzungen dieses Morgens mit einem Moment der Stille beenden, bevor wir singen und beten. Lobet Gott. Lobet ihn für seine Taten. Lobet ihn in seiner großen Heiligkeit. Lobet ihn mit Posaunen. Lobet ihn mit Psalter und Harfen. Lobet ihn mit Pauken und Pfeifen. Lobet ihn mit Saiten und Pfeifen. Lobet ihn mit Hellensingen, lobet ihn mit klingenden Singen. Möge alles, was Boden hat, den Herrn loben, lobet den Herrn. Lob sei dir, der du deine Liebe überall auf der Welt verbreitest. Segne unsere Essen und segne unsere Gemeinschaft als seine Zeugen. Im Namen des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes. Und wir singen zusammen 25.
To the ends of
Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.